What is up guys, and welcome back to SP Vids. In today's video I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the features that I've really been enjoying about the Mark II since I've had it. Now since I've been allowed to go public with this device, I've been using it so much more and learning so much about it. Really enjoying the workflows and really enjoying using it. And in this video I wanted to share with you some things that I've been especially enjoying about this device. I will add the markers to the video, so if you want to skip to any point in particular you'll be able to do that easily. And yeah, hopefully these videos are just giving you more and more insight into this device and what it's like to use day to day. I know you're obviously all itching to get a hold of these, especially those that have pre-ordered already, but I'm hoping these videos are giving you a good insight, and when you pick this unit up you'll be straight in there making beats. So the first point that I want to talk about is the extended resampling. Now, I've spoke about this in the dedicated resampling video. I'll put a link to that in the top right hand corner. I had a weird method that I made up for making beats because I used to hate the limitations of resampling on the SX. I didn't like the pattern mode, but the resampling mode was also very limiting, I found personally. So what I used to do is play my beats out live. So obviously on the Mark II they've done a massive update on that, and now the resampling workflow is so much easier to use and it's so much better that I've actually just been using it all the time to make my beats now. So I'm fully sold on resampling. That's the main method I'm using on this machine to make beats. And I've got some examples here that I can show you. These are just various loops that I've put together. So yeah, all those loops were made using Resample, and I think you can get a really smooth workflow if you use them in combination with the mute groups. So I've been absolutely loving the Resample update. I think that really has opened up things for me personally for making full beats, and I'm sure it will be the same for you guys, especially those of you that were already pretty good at resampling on the SX and the A. This is just going to feel like such a breath of fresh air to be able to resample so many things onto the same pad. So the next thing that I want to talk about ties in with resampling really, and to be honest all these points are probably going to tie into each other because they all surround my beat making workflow. So the next thing is the visual waveform editor. Now it's really easy to get to. You just have to hit start and edit and immediately you can get into a waveform. The screen is such a good update, and now we can so easily find loop points and points where we want to cut the samples to get those perfect loops, especially when we're resampling. But even those of you that don't resample, this is going to be such a godsend to be able to drill in this far into the waveforms and chop where you need to and cut where you need to. So I can actually even see at the start of this one there's a little gap which I could go back and trim out. And being able to go into 11 times zoom, it's just so useful for getting those loops. And like I mentioned as well, with the resample workflow where you do need to get good loops, this is a really neat feature. And being able to mark the start and end points visually and the looping point visually as well, it's just an absolute game changer, and it means you can get those really nice smooth loops. So I've spent a lot of time inside this area so far, especially with creating beats using the resample method. And I'm sure even for people using the pattern sequencer, when you get this device, when you're resampling those patterns to add your effects, you'll be using this feature as well to cut those down and make sure they loop perfectly. So all in all, this feature is probably going to be useful for absolutely everyone that's using this device. It doesn't matter which way you make beats with it, or even if you're just using it as a sampler, you'll be able to trim your samples very accurately, and that's a huge game changer. So another feature that I really like is the 16 pads in a bank, and it just makes such a big difference when you're making a beat. So my workflow has always been that I have one beat per bank essentially, and even on the SX, even though there was only 12 in that one, that used to be the same case for me. I would use one bank to make a beat, and each bank would basically be a beat or a beat idea, and I'd record those out at some point at a later date. So for me personally, again, having the 16 pads in a bank just opens up a lot more possibilities. It means I can use the chopping feature, which is something I'm going to move on to later, and it just means that you've just got that extra little bit of breathing space. So if you want to add in some Foley's or some wrapping over the top of your beat, you've got that extra 4 pads, and it really does make a massive difference. So yeah, this one's been huge for me really. I now feel really comfortable having 16 pads to make a beat. It feels like the right amount that I need. Obviously more would be even better, but practically with the size of the unit and everything, I think Roland have done really well to squeeze in another row of pads, and it just means we can have things like the full chromatic mode and 16 velocity as well. So 16 pads is really something we're a lot more used to as beat makers, especially looking at other devices like the MPCs. They've all got 16 pads in the bank. The fact that Roland have managed to squeeze these in, yeah, it's really cool, and I've been really enjoying having those extra 4 pads in each bank. Okay, the next feature that I want to talk about is again related to resampling, but it's also related to just creating loops in the first place, and it's the mute groups. The mute groups are absolutely amazing, and to be honest, I think that's probably one of the features that I use on every beat since I've picked up this device. Every beat that I record, this sample will be going into pad 1. That'll be immediately chopped with the chopping feature, and then I'll be using the mute groups to create patterns. So here's an example I've got here on my bank F. I've got a sample cut up, and already I can start creating really interesting ideas with these mute groups. So you really get the idea of that. It's super easy to cut stuff up. It's super easy to get things into these mute groups. You just have to do shift and mute group. So when you go into the mute group area, you've got 10 possible mute groups. And inside each of those mute groups, you can have a total of 16 pads. So you're never going to struggle to get the desired results that you want from these mute groups thanks to this. You can have 16 pads, and you're only going to ever have 16 pads in a bank. So you'll be able to mute group everything if you wanted to. So yeah, really, really handy. These don't actually correlate to the banks. That's the only thing that I don't like about this. So even though this mute group is in pad F, that I would have to actually go to F to be able to edit it, so it doesn't automatically go to that mute group, which I really think would be beneficial actually. I would much prefer it that if you went into mute groups, it was already at the bank that you're in, but instead it's just kind of like, it's the same letters, but it's a completely different thing that's not related to the banks. But yeah, apart from that, it's absolutely amazing. I've been loving it, and you can get so many more creative ideas than you could back on the old SX and A, where you couldn't even do repeated hits on pads very cleanly. So yeah, really, really enjoying the mute groups, and like I say, I've been using those on pretty much every beat that I've made so far on this box. Okay, the last point, and by no means least, probably could have mentioned this before, mute groups actually, because it's kind of the second part of this option, and it's chopping. So again, very, very easy to get into. I usually record the sample onto pad 1 and immediately shift and start end, and I'll go into the chop. And that puts you in chopping mode, and it's just so easy to chop up samples. I've done a full video about chopping mode already, so again, I'll link to that in the top right hand corner so you can see the capabilities. But chopping mode is so, so good, and it's something that we really lacked on the older devices. We had to do everything by ear. Now we can do it by visual waveform and really, really get our chops nice and buttery. And just on a side note on top of that as well, chop mode in combination with envelope, which is this new feature we've got here with shift and pitch / speed. You can get rid of all those horrible little crackly sounds that you get at the start of samples. You can just add a little fade on the start, and that just gets rid of it all. And one question I've been getting asked a lot is about sidechaining. You can't sidechain on this, but what you can do is add an envelope, quite a heavy envelope like I am here, and that will emulate that kind of pump sound that you get when you use sidechain compression. It will dip the sample out at the start so that the kick can punch through the mix. So yeah, there is a workaround to the sidechaining. It's a bit more fiddly, obviously. It would be great to have a sidechain feature, but this is a good workaround, and you can use the envelope feature to do that as well. So there we go, guys. There are some of my favorite features of the 404 Mark II so far. I'd love to know what you're most excited about this unit, so leave a comment below and let me know. Don't forget you can support this channel as well. You can either pick up my beat packs on my store, which I'll show on the screen here, and I've also got a Teespring website as well, full of t-shirts related to the 404 and lo-fi music. Both the links to them are available in the description below. Both of them help support what I'm doing here and keep me funded, so I'd really appreciate it if you could look at either of those. But apart from that, guys, keep making beats. I'll be back with more content very soon. Peace!